Welcome to RankLens. Today, we count down the top 10 scientists whose revolutionary ideas were rejected in their own time. Scientists who were right all along. Ideas so radical, so ahead of their time, that the entire world got it wrong. From medicine to physics, from mathematics to geology, we're counting down the most stunning rejections in scientific history. Some faced mockery from peers. Some faced institutional imprisonment. Some never lived long enough to see their vindication. Others waited decades, even centuries, for the world to catch up. This is the story of 10 scientists whose revolutionary ideas were rejected in their own time. Let's go. At number 10, Barry Marshall and Robin Warren. They waited roughly 23 years for the world to believe them. In 1982, Marshall and Warren proposed something simple and radical. Stomach ulcers weren't caused by stress or spicy food. They were caused by bacteria, a spiral microorganism called Helicobacter pylori. The medical establishment dismissed them outright. How could bacteria survive stomach acid? Impossible. But Marshall didn't back down. He did something bold. He drank a culture of H. pylori himself. Within days, he developed an ulcer. He'd proven it. In 2005, Marshall and Warren shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Sometimes the cure for rejection is a single, unforgettable act of proof. At number 9, Barbara McClintock. She waited roughly 32 years for science to catch up. In the 1940s, while studying corn chromosomes in her lab, McClintock made a discovery so strange it seemed impossible: genes that moved. Not mutations, not errors. Genes that jumped from one location on a chromosome to another, changing inheritance patterns in unpredictable ways. Her colleagues found the idea not just wrong, repugnant. Jumping genes? Radical, unproven, unthinkable. The ridicule was so intense that McClintock stopped publishing her results. She continued her work in silence. Then, in the 1960s and 1970s, molecular biology caught up. Scientists using DNA sequencing proved she was right all along. In 1983, she received an unshared Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, the highest honor science can bestow. At number 8, Peyton Rous. He faced the longest vindication window on our countdown, 55 years. In 1911, Rous injected a tumor extract from one chicken into another and proved that a virus, a microscopic agent, caused cancer. The implication was staggering. Disease wasn't just bacteria or chemistry. A virus could turn healthy cells malignant. But the world wasn't ready. For decades, doctors rejected him. How could an invisible virus cause something as complex as cancer? Impossible. Rous kept working, kept believing in his evidence, even as the establishment moved on without him. Then, slowly, evidence piled up. Viral oncology became real. Papillomavirus, Epstein-Barr, HIV, and lymphoma. In 1966, at the remarkable age of 87, Rous won the Nobel Prize. He lived just long enough to see vindication. At number 7, Georg Cantor. He was rejected for roughly 25 years before vindication. In the late 1800s, Cantor discovered something that shattered mathematical intuition. Some infinities are larger than other infinities. He called them different cardinalities, different magnitudes of infinity. It was revolutionary. It was also treated as heresy. His fiercest critic was Leopold Kronecker, an influential mathematician who called Cantor's set theory a corruption of youth. Kronecker used his power to block Cantor's career advancement, to isolate him, to convince the mathematical world that his ideas were poison. The attacks took their toll. Cantor suffered devastating mental breakdowns. He was trapped between genius and rejection. Then David Hilbert arrived. Hilbert declared Cantor's set theory a mathematical paradise. He defended it, he championed it, and the world finally listened. At number 6, J Harlen Bretz. He was ridiculed for roughly 50 years before vindication. In the 1920s, Bretz looked at the landscape of Washington state and saw something the geological establishment refused to accept: catastrophe. The channeled scablands, a maze of canyons and dry waterfalls, could only be carved, he argued, by an immense, catastrophic flood, not a gradual process, a single titanic event. The U.S. Geological Survey dismissed him. Geologists had built their entire worldview on uniformitarianism, the idea that slow, steady processes shaped the Earth. Catastrophe was pseudoscience. It was fantasy. They mocked him. They stonewalled him. Bretz kept gathering evidence. In the 1960s and 1970s, other scientists finally confirmed what he'd been saying. The Missoula floods were real. In 1979, at the age of 96, Bretz received geology's highest honor, the Peyton Rous Medal. At number 5, Ludwig Boltzmann. His vindication came too late. He didn't live to see it. Boltzmann was convinced that matter was made of atoms, tiny, invisible, constantly moving atoms. He built a theory of thermodynamics around this vision, but he was swimming upstream. Ernst Mach and Wilhelm Ostwald, giants of physics, led a fierce philosophical opposition. They denied atoms even existed. Boltzmann fought back with equations, with evidence, with logic. But Mach and Ostwald had power, followers, and prestige. Boltzmann was isolated, attacked, exhausted. The constant rejection wore on him. On September 5, 1906, depressed and broken, Boltzmann took his own life. He never saw it. But just years after his death, Einstein's work on Brownian motion and Jean Perrin's experiments proved atoms were real. At number 4, Gregor Mendel. He waited roughly 34 years for recognition, and he never got it in life. In the 1860s, an Austrian monk named Gregor Mendel crossbred pea plants in his monastery garden. He wasn't famous. He wasn't at a prestigious university. But he was meticulous. He tracked traits across generations. He noticed patterns, dominant and recessive traits, predictable inheritance. In 1866, Mendel published his findings, the foundation of modern genetics. Almost nobody read it. His work was too far ahead of its time. Biologists didn't know how to think about heredity. Mendel died in 1884, believing his life's work was a failure. But in 1900, 3 biologists independently rediscovered his work. They realized what it was: a complete system of inheritance. Mendel had mapped the future of biology. He just never got to see it. At number 3, Alfred Wegener. He was rejected for roughly 50 years. In 1912, Wegener proposed something that seemed insane. The continents weren't fixed, they moved. Slowly, over millions of years, they drifted across the globe. He pointed to the evidence: coastlines that fit like puzzle pieces, fossil records that matched across separated continents. But there was a problem. He couldn't explain the mechanism. How do continents move? Without an answer, the geological establishment turned on him. And there was another factor. Wegener wasn't a geologist, he was a meteorologist. To the establishment, he was an outsider. They ridiculed him. They dismissed him. They made his career difficult. He died in 1930, his theory rejected. But in the 1960s, a revolution happened. Seafloor spreading, plate tectonics, the mechanism. Scientists suddenly understood how continents could move. Wegener had been right all along. At number 2, Ignaz Semmelweis. He waited roughly 20 years for vindication, but he never lived to see it. In 1840s, Vienna, childbirth was deadly. Women died of childbed fever at alarming rates. Semmelweis noticed something. Doctors who delivered babies after performing autopsies had higher mortality rates. He had a hypothesis. What if doctors were carrying death from the autopsy room to the birthing room? He proposed a simple solution: hand washing with chlorine solution before delivery. The results were staggering. Mortality rates plummeted, but instead of celebration, Semmelweis faced ridicule. The medical establishment was insulted. The implication that doctors' hands were dirty was considered offensive. They mocked him. They rejected him. They isolated him. In 1865, Semmelweis was admitted to a mental asylum. There, he was beaten by guards. He died within 2 weeks, at age 47. A few years later, Pasteur and Lister proved germ theory. Semmelweis had been right. At number 1, Galileo Galilei. His vindication took 359 years. Galileo believed what the ancient mathematician Copernicus had proposed. The sun is at the center. The earth moves around it. With his telescope, Galileo saw evidence everywhere: moons orbiting Jupiter, phases of Venus, proof that heliocentrism was real. But the Roman Catholic Church had decided otherwise. Heliocentrism contradicted Scripture. In 1633, Galileo was tried by the Roman Inquisition. He was forced to recant his work, to deny what he'd seen. They placed him under house arrest for the rest of his life. For decades, he couldn't publish, couldn't speak publicly, couldn't teach. He was silenced by institutional power. Galileo died in 1642, still under house arrest, still officially condemned. 359 years later, on October 31, 1992, Pope John Paul II formally acknowledged the error. The Church cleared Galileo's name. What does this countdown reveal? It shows us something uncomfortable about human nature and institutions. Experts resist change. Establishments protect themselves. And genius, almost by definition, arrives before the world is ready to receive it. These 10 scientists didn't fail because they were wrong. They suffered because they were right. They had the courage to trust evidence over popularity, fact over authority. Some waited decades. Some faced exile or imprisonment. Some died in obscurity, vindicated only by the next generation. But all of them kept going. They kept working. They kept believing. That's the real lesson. Revolutionary ideas aren't rejected because they're complicated. They're rejected because they threaten the order of things. And the scientists who change history are the ones brave enough to persist anyway. They are the architects of progress. And that's the top 10 scientists whose revolutionary ideas were rejected in their own time. If you enjoyed this countdown, subscribe to RankLens for more.